this story makes me uncomfortable. The reason is, on the face of this story, there is a huge disconnect between Jesus' first response to the woman and the Jesus that I've come to know and love. As a representative of the church, there's a part of me that wants to make excuses for Jesus. Excuses that might explain his treatment of this mother. Excuses like, Jesus was having a bad day. And you know, we all have bad days from time to time. He was, after all, human and divine. And this must have been one of his really human days. At the beginning of this story, we learn that Jesus has gone to Tyre to be alone. And the story tells us he didn't want anyone to know where he was. He needed some silence and possibly some time away. And who could blame him after all? And the schedule that he'd been keeping and traveling the countryside and teaching the crowds and healing the throngs of people. He was just so tired. And you know how we get when we're tired, right? These are my excuses for his behavior. And I have to make them because I still don't understand how he could treat this desperate mother in the story in such an uncompassionate way. It's out of character. It's not consistent with who he is for the rest of the story in the Gospels. And it makes me uncomfortable. You heard it right. Jesus has gone to Tyre, a long ways from his home in Galilee, and he doesn't want anyone to know where he is. But somehow this Syrophoenician woman has learned that Jesus, the healer, is in town. And she finds out where he is and throws herself at his feet and begs him to heal her sick daughter. This desperate mother is a Gentile, and Jesus is a Jew. And Gentiles and Jews were not the best of friends. But this fact does nothing to deter this mother because she is desperate, and desperate mothers do desperate things when their children are in trouble. She begs, she pleads, on the floor at his feet to heal her daughter. But Jesus denies her request. It's the only place in the gospel where Jesus denies someone a healing. Not only does Jesus deny her, but he also insults her. Let the children be fed first, for it's not fair to take the food of theirs and throw it to the dogs. To the dogs. Jesus calls this woman one of the worst insults in the ancient world. Dogs in that culture and in those days were bony scavengers on the streets, diseased and dirty, fighting for any scrap of food that they could get. And Jews called Gentiles dogs to demean them. And Greeks called shameless women dogs to put them in their place. It was the greatest of insults. And it comes out of the mouth of Jesus. Now, some Bible interpreters try to nice it up, as much as I do, to make excuses for justifications for Jesus' initial response. They say things like, Jesus knew what he was doing all along. He was going to grant her request. He was just putting her to the test to see if she knew about his teaching on inclusion. He was just pushing her to fight for her needs to be met. But somehow that interpretation leaves me cold. But other interpreters don't make excuses for Jesus' behavior. Instead, they say he was just as fully human as he was divine. And the fully human part means that he struggled and snapped, he faltered, and he grew along the way. These interpreters hail the Gentile mother as being the catalyst that brought Jesus to a fuller understanding of his call. Through her sharp mind and cunning wit, she pushes Jesus in his own thinking to see and understand that God's vision of love could never be limited to the Jews, to one people group, because God's love is meant for everyone. God's love is meant for all people. Now that's a lot of influence from an outsider, a woman, and a Gentile. This mother just doesn't stand for Jesus' denial. Jesus has said, "Let the little children be fed first, for it's not fair to take their food and give it to the dogs." And she responds, "Yes, Jesus, but even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table." Wow, now that is a woman with some chutzpah. That is a woman we can all learn from. That's a woman whose faith has a faith and a hope that won't quit or be silenced. She might be put down, but she won't be turned away. And her chutzpah and her perseverance for not taking no for an answer, she gets the job done. Jesus has a change of heart and moves more fully into God's calling to bring all people into love's saving embrace. He gives her what she desires. Because of your faith, the demon has left your daughter. Go. This is the day the gospel of Jesus Christ goes to the dogs. The religious laws and traditions of the day saw this woman as an outsider, as an outcast, but in this moment, Jesus sees instead her heart of faith, and he heals her child. The woman got what she came for. She knew Jesus could heal. She knew what God was capable of: inclusion, healing, wholeness, and she wouldn't stop until it was given to her and her daughter. That is faith that won't be cast aside. That is a faith that presses on day by day, consistently, relentlessly. And it's really too bad that we don't know her name. Otherwise, we might hold a feast day in her honor, commemorating the kind of faith that never gives up or gives in. This woman makes me think of another woman that I met on a plane a few years ago. I was on a flight to the Bible Belt to visit some of my family, and I said, "I like your watch. That's a cool wide leather band." And then one thing led to another, and we were figuring out where each of us was going to and where each of us was coming from, and eventually the dreaded question arose: "So what do you do for a living?" I do not like that question. And I have to make a confession: I have been known to lie. Sometimes, because sometimes I'm just too tired to bear the brunt of being a clergy person. Being a bookkeeper is so much easier to say. In my experience, saying you're clergy can completely shut down a conversation. It can also have the opposite effect and create an impromptu confessional at 30,000 feet. In this particular conversation, I decided to be honest, and the latter occurred. By the end of the flight, this woman, I'll call her Abby, had entrusted me with her story. I learned that she had been raped by her childhood pastor. I learned she was gay and had just broken off a 10-year relationship. I learned she had tried to take her own life with pills and alcohol just 3 months prior to our conversation. And I also learned, and this may be the most surprising thing, I learned she still went to church. A non-denominational church in the heartland of the Bible Belt. Do they know you're gay? I asked her. Oh no, she said. And why do you go to a place where people don't accept you as you are? And she looked at me a little confused and simply responded, because I find God there. When we worship and sing and I lift my hands, I know that God is in love with me. There and then, and that's all that really matters. Now that is a faith that will not quit. That is a faith that keeps searching no matter the cost. That is a faith that knows deep down the pure love of God and will not let go. I hope by now that Abby has found a church that accepts and embraces her for who she is. But I also know that she has already found the one true God of love. The faith of Abby, like the faith of the Syrophoenician woman, is a faith to inspire and to follow. It's a fierce faith that doesn't give up or give in. And it's a faith that mirrors for us the faithfulness of God that will not let us go. Abby and the Syrophoenician woman are our witnesses today of that kind of faith. May their dogged and determined faith be ours as well.